Thank you for joining us on the Nikki Maduro Show. I'm Nikki Maduro. She's Kim McAllister. And damn, what a weekend it has been. Hit that subscribe button. Today is the start of the Republican National Convention, which I can only imagine Kim is going to have. Although they've said they're not going to have any different security, because obviously there's a lot of security at the Republican National Convention. But obviously after what's been called an assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump over the weekend, you can only imagine that there's going to be checking and double checking over every single corner, roof, and person that is going to the Republican National Convention. I guess first off, your initial thoughts. So I was at the Mrs. Roper Romp, and I got a news alert on my phone, and it was very good. It was a lot of fun. It feels inappropriate to talk about right now, but maybe at the end of the show, I'll show you some pictures. But I'm walking around in my wig and my muumuu, and I get a news alert on my phone that there was a sound at a Trump rally. And then I got an alert with a photo of Donald Trump with some blood across his face. And that concerned me, because it didn't look like it was his blood. Because at first I didn't see the ear. It was just like that, that's,
smear
splat across his face. So I thought maybe somebody else had been injured. And then all of a sudden the news came out that he had been shot in the ear. Somebody had died. And, and now we know that there was this kid. I'm going to call him a kid. He was 20 years old. Thomas Crooks hadn't even voted. This was going to be his first presidential election. And let's be completely clear. Hadn't voted in a presidential election, was registered as a Republican, had donated, I don't know, like $35 to some Democratic leaning party. I think it was like, I don't know, actblue.org or some sort of liberal leaning organization, but was a registered Republican. Doesn't matter. Apparently was described by the people that know him, Kim, as a swell guy. Wow. And he's obviously dead. I mean, he's 20 years old. And for some reason, we don't know at this point, as of the recording of this show, nothing has been found. No sort of, note, letter, anything of importance that would explain why this guy got on the roof of this building extremely close for some reason to Donald Trump, was able to get way too close, and was able to fire off a shot and got him right through the ear. I don't know, man. There are so many pundits and so many people kind of bloviating on what this means and what this means for the election. This was my first thought. One, geez, like this at a rally. This is what's happening right now. Well, my first thought was, how the hell did it happen? Right? Like he's not just a candidate. He's a former president candidate. Right. Like,
what's the
there
Secret
should have been
Service doing?
Hell of a lot more security, I would have thought.
If you look at a map, that building was pretty close.
It was very close.
It looked like the main building across the street.
Yeah,
so
it was.
Why they wouldn't have had people stationed there? Why they wouldn't have, at least had someone on the roof? Like, that should have been. Don't they always have? So my husband used to work at this really fancy hotel in Santa Barbara. Mm-hmm. And once President Clinton came, and my husband, because he was a former Marine, was the one that was allowed to bring him food. Since he worked at the hotel, he'd been cleared. He had military clearance or whatever. I don't know how it worked. So he meets them all, and he actually takes them food up to the roof and up to the places where they're stationed. And he's like, they're not messing around. They have snipers. They're all over the place. Like, this is serious business. So my first thought was, all the descriptions that he's talking about that happened at a hotel speech for President Clinton way back when. And now you've got Trump, who, let's face it, he's very incendiary. I would imagine that many more threats are involved in this type of a scenario. Right. And so just because of the nature of it all, because we're more divided now, because people are angrier now, whatever.
Yes, of course.
And so why they would not have had someone on that other building that was so close. And there's a lot of conspiracy theories, and there's a lot of chit chat and talk. But one of the things I was reading was that someone saw this young man climbing the side of the building with a rifle and tried to flag down an officer, and they were ignored. Did you read that?
I didn't read that. I did hear that a local officer who helps the Secret Service, when there's events like this, which is what happens, right? You use
Sure.
local police in these towns. An officer had actually tried to go up onto the roof because he had saw this suspicious person and like kind of peeked over, and apparently the gunman allegedly fired a shot or pointed, not fired a shot, but pointed the gun at the officer. The officer dipped down. That's when the gunman apparently, allegedly, that's when he turned to Donald Trump. And maybe they're saying that's why he didn't have a good shot or didn't aim well.
Sure.
There's a lot of things, right? I mean, they're going through the whole thing. The other thing I heard, because you do see the video of the sniper who took out the gunman, right? Where the snipers are looking is farther out than the guy was, because everyone, I think, was again assuming that inside perimeter was clear, right?
Right.
So these snipers are looking farther out. And so then all of a sudden you see, and was one of the analysis I saw, you saw the sniper and he's looking out, and then he sees his point of vision, apparently, from one of the explanations, gets closer, and he looks up and he looks down and he sees it happening, right? Look, I say this, I've said this so many times. I don't wish death on anybody. Honestly, I hate Donald Trump. I do. I don't wish death on him. I don't think that I agree with President Biden. I'll play you a clip of his address last night to the nation regarding this. I agree that we should be able to have political disagreements without assassinating our political rivals or people we disagree with or that we don't want in power. We should be there. But I will also say this, and I do not think that this is an unfair thing to say. We need leaders to lead by example. Yes. And it is unfair and it is disingenuous for politicians to say with one hand out one side of their mouth, oh, the political discourse needs to come down, and then point the finger at all these people. There were people, apparently, I was reading some news reports, Kim, at the rally right after the shooting, saying it's your fault that it's this way, pointing to the media, not even ignoring. And I'm not saying that the media has their hands clean. I'm not saying that. But it's like everyone has their blinders on of their own specific role in the problem of political discourse in this country. When you are sitting there calling for the head of Nancy Pelosi or calling for like when it's kind of this war aspect of it all, right? Instead of like, we just disagree about policy. Let's vote in elections. Let's have conversations. Let's try to get through to each other. But when it becomes, I'm going to break into your house, I'm going to make phone calls and threaten your family, I'm going to get a gun and go on top of a building. Like we've gone past the point of no return. So I bring that up because, again, I'm going to play you a little bit of it right now. It will be extremely interesting to see and hear at the Republican National Convention this week what kind of rhetoric is used and said, not just by Donald Trump, but everyone else there who is calling on all of us to bring down the temperature. And yet, are they going to do the same?
Before you hit the video, I just want to remind everyone about January 6th and about how Trump is calling them, political prisoners or, people that need to be exonerated, that somehow that what they did on January 6th, which was political violence.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It was domestic terrorism.
Is somehow okay. And it's not okay, and it wasn't okay then, and it's not okay now.
Right. Exactly. And so
it wasn't okay
none
when
of it
Paul
is
Pelosi
okay.
was hit with a hammer. None of it's okay. We should be able to have different opinions and disagree and still coexist. Mm-hmm. And we've gotten to the point where we can't do it.
Exactly. Well, I mean, we have to get back to a place where we can. And if a guy who has not even had the opportunity to vote in a presidential election took it upon himself, I mean, as far as we know right now, nothing in his past would indicate that he was on the edge, anything like that. All the people are saying, I mean, he worked at a nursing home, right? I mean, there's nothing that would show that he was like this, but he felt that he needed to get his dad's gun, go to the top of the building and do something like this. Then there is something out there that is feeding him some sort of message that he felt he had to do this. Now, I'm not excusing it, obviously. There is obviously something wrong with him. But again, if we are bringing down the temperature of political discourse and discussion in this country, then I'm going to look to the leaders to see if they're going to lead. And that's how you make a decision on who is qualified to lead this nation. And I will be very interested to watch, because this is what I think a leader is supposed to sound like. This is what a leader in times of crisis is supposed to sound like. And of course, to me, it sounds like President Biden.
Violence for any violence ever. Period. No exceptions. We can't allow this violence to be normalized. You know, the political record in this country has gotten very heated. It's time to cool it down. We all have a responsibility to do that. Yes, we have deeply felt strong disagreements. The stakes in this election are enormously high. I've said it many times that the choice in this election we make in this election is going to shape the future of America and the world for decades to come. I believe that with all my soul. I know that millions of my fellow Americans believe it as well. And some have a different view as to the direction our country should take. Disagreement is inevitable in American democracy. It's part of human nature. But politics must never be a literal battlefield, and God forbid, a killing field. I believe politics ought to be an arena for peaceful debate, to pursue justice, to make decisions guided by the Declaration of Independence and our Constitution. We stand for an America, not of extremism and fury, but of decency and grace. All of us now face the time of testing as the election approaches. And the higher the stakes, the more fervent the passions become. This places an added burden on each of us to ensure that no matter how strong our convictions, we must never descend into violence.
And that's well said. And so again, I know that obviously former President Trump put out a statement thanking law enforcement and kind of giving his take on the events. But this week will speak volumes to, where the finger pointing and whether or not they're really going to bring it down. Talk policy, talk disagreements. And I don't know if you watched the entire address that Biden gave, but, he didn't shy away from also saying this is still an important election. He still believes that democracy is on the line for the next generations to come. Biden is still maintaining he believes that this is a very consequential election, and he's not backing down from that. Everyone that's like, oh, it's Trump's just has it in the bag because he was shot in the ear. You could totally think that if you want to. I don't think that. I mean, there is still a fight for what we want and where we want this country to go. And just because someone attempted to take the life of a former president doesn't mean that conversation is over.
So I feel like it's the battle of whipping people up into a frenzy. Right. That if you have Trump whipping people up into this frenzy, this like frothing at the mouth, where, Trump backers and all the way and blah, blah, blah. And you almost have to now match it on the other side. Otherwise, there's not enough momentum to match it. So what happens if President Biden says, we got to cool down this rhetoric. We got to be calm. Right. And we have calm, cool, collected Democrats that are then somehow not pissed off enough or motivated enough to go to the polls. It's going to be interesting to see what he means by cool down the rhetoric, because on one hand, he has to say nothing is worth violence. Well, in the scheme of things, nothing is worth violence, but we still do believe he's this person. We still do believe he's wrong for America. We still do believe our nation is at risk.
And you can still say that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's not violent. I'm not calling for the death of Donald Trump to say I don't think that he should be president of the United States. I don't agree with his policies. I think that his policies are bad for Americans. I think that it will head us in the wrong direction. I think it heads us back to a time in which we had fewer rights. I don't believe in the Christian nationalist way of thinking. I don't think that the people that he would surround himself have my interests at heart. I think he would undo a lot of the things regarding climate change and what have you. I don't agree with his policies. That is not violent rhetoric. And if you believe in such things as reproductive freedom, then yes, you do think that your reproductive freedoms are at risk under another Donald Trump presidency. That is not violent rhetoric.
Well, I heard some Republican lawmakers say the reason that Trump was grazed by a bullet is because, or there was an attempt on his life, is because Democrats are calling him a fascist. That the word fascist has been used and this violent language has been used. And that's the reason that it somehow whipped up somebody to be so angry that they would open fire. I would argue that if you're looking at political violence, again, I refer you to January 6th, right? Let's look at who's whipped up political violence.
Exactly.
And who's really behind not having gun restrictions in America? Who on the Supreme Court said it's a great idea to have bump stocks? Not that was involved in this, but in the scheme of things, like, we're looking at guns in America and violence in America, and I don't think you can blame Democrats for that.
No, I feel like, again,
does that make sense? Or
it does make
am I being
sense.
too vague or in general?
No, I mean, I think that it matters what side you're standing on whether or not you think that something is too far across the line. And I think that that's our political bias showing, right? I mean, obviously, if you are a Republican and you are just seeing all these illegals streaming across the border and they're threatening your jobs and your family and it's leading to crime, I mean, you would say that the Democrats are a huge threat. Their policies are a huge threat to America, right? And so you're not thinking that that is violent rhetoric, right? So it matters your viewpoint, your perception. I mean, perception is your reality. And so that's the problem here, is that we don't seem to have this ability to take a deep breath, look at a situation. And I'm going to go back to the border because that seems to be the issue in which Democrats and Republicans can't seem to disagree, and yet both are responsible for. You know what I mean? It's not as if Donald Trump solved the immigration problem. We still didn't have immigration reform. He wanted to build a wall. It didn't fix the problem of the fact that we use migrant labor for our economy. You can't do mass deportation in this country without crippling our economy. He has no answer to that. And when again asked during the debate how that would happen, what it would look like, the logistics, the impact to the United States, he did not have an answer. So, I mean, this is the problem, is that, well, Donald Trump loves to talk in like huge generalities. I'm going to fix the country. I am going to make our economy the best. You know what I mean? It's like he's the genie with all the wishes and he's going to grant you everything you could ever want. And then when you ask the one simple question of how, they never have the answers to that. So again, that's the problem. And then when you want the specifics, they don't have it. When you want the evidence of certain things like, I don't know, election fraud, they don't have it. You know, that's the problem. And then we start getting back into these tit for tat arguments. And then we fall back into this, again, argumentative, divisive conversation that goes nowhere. And young people, 20-year-olds, stuck on social media, going down rabbit holes, having no point of reference either, right? And a lot of things I was reading about today were about, you know, not even being old enough to remember when the assassination attempt on Ronald Reagan, right? Not remembering, having no point of reference. And I'm not making light of this. Again, I'm on this like Gen X Facebook page, and somebody had posted today, and they're like, so no, nobody's going to be commenting on this page on the assassination attempt, huh? And I'm not making light about it, but someone's like, I saw like 7 people blow up out in the sky when I was in 3rd grade. So yeah, someone getting shot in the ear doesn't really faze me all that much. And it was just kind of like, we grew up in a different generation where things like this happened. A 20-year-old, no point of reference for something like this, right? No point of reference for the political discourse. All they know, some of them may have remembered Barack Obama being president of the United States, but then what came after that, right? Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump, Joe Biden. I mean, think about that. That is your political perspective right now. Think about how insane your political perspective must be as a 20-year-old. I mean, think about how engaged you are in politics and what age that started in. Right. And then think about what years influenced
I would say right about that
kid.
Age, right?
Right? So now what's your point of reference? Donald Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden. That nonsense is the only reference point you have. So this is how things are done. You yell, you scream, You go down election rabbit holes online. No wonder they're going off their rocker. And I'm not making an excuse for it. But this is what we have to remember. And so it doesn't surprise me that the guy with the gun on the roof was only 20 years old.
Meanwhile,
because,
we talk about Trump getting grazed in the ear with a bullet, right? But there's someone who died.
Yes.
Someone died. A bullet
Protecting
did hit a man.
Family,
His name
and
is a firefighter, which, someone who runs in when everyone's running out. His name is Corey Comparatori. He's got 2 daughters. Mm-hmm. Looks like they're older, but as far as like late teens kind of daughters. But he is missed. And I was reading the heartbreaking messages that one of his daughters wrote online. There's a GoFundMe. They've already raised more than, $1.5 million for him. But someone's life was taken in this. Yep. So it's just really sad.
Exactly. Yeah. And the thing that sucks is, because people can be awful. And I'll be honest, I've read a lot of awful comments and a lot of people kind of couching it in certain ways. Well, that's what you get for going to a Trump rally. It's like, no, you're allowed to go to a Trump rally. You're allowed to be a vote for Donald Trump. I don't agree with you.
You're allowed to be a Trumper and open your mouth and have vitriol come out.
Exactly.
I don't know if he was that kind of Trumper, but you're allowed to do that because this is America and you shouldn't be shot for it.
No, you shouldn't be shot. Like, again, you can stand out there, and that's what it means to be an American. What you're not allowed to do, you're not allowed to get up on a roof with a gun and shoot at somebody. You're not allowed to storm the Capitol and break in and do all that freaking nonsense. Right. What you're allowed to do is you're allowed to go to rallies and you're allowed to vote. And that's all I ask people to do. All of these people that are whining and crying today, oh, we lost the election. What are we ever going to do? Freaking do the same thing you were going to do last year. You freaking vote. You vote just like you were going to vote before. I mean, did your outlook on where you think this country should go, has that changed? Has your engagement changed? It shouldn't have. If it has, and you were wishy-washy to begin with. And I don't wish ill on anybody, but I still maintain that this guy, I'm glad I'm glad that he didn't die. Right. I mean, I never wish death on anybody. This seems really weird to me, but whatever.
It's like he has to always maintain this illusion of strength. So even if, bullets are flying, he's got to stand up in the sky and raise his fist upward and somehow say, like, I'm the strong one. Same thing with the mugshot. It's like, is he ever not performing?
Yeah, I don't know. All I'm saying is that guy doesn't deserve to be president of the United States. Just because he got shot in the ear doesn't mean that you're qualified to be president of the United States. And I will say that until the cows come home. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But again, it's also a long time between now and then, and we still have to stay engaged. And we'll continue to call him out in a respectful way. I've never called for violence. I've called for engagement. You know what I mean? And that's what we need to do. So again, as this week progresses, we'll see how the Republican National Convention goes, and we'll see how true to their word they really are. And I'm talking about the Republicans and the conservatives on bringing down the temperature, because they often like to project that in which they do. And so we'll see how kind-hearted and peace-loving and all that they are going to be. Because in times of crisis, you need a leader and a uniter. And let's see if we find anybody at the Republican National Convention that fits that mold.
It could have been, I hate to, this is always said, it could have been so much worse. But I was reading yesterday about this report from the Associated Press that bomb-making materials were found in the home and the vehicle of this Trump rally gunman. Yeah. And I don't know if they found any bombs like near the rally or anything, but just like that, it's just, what is happening? Who was keeping their eye on this young man? Where's the parents? What's going on?
I mean, he's an adult. You know what I mean? He's 20 years old. But yeah, I read that as well. Yeah. But again, it doesn't seem like there was anything in this kid's background, at least at this point, at the time that, he's from Bethel Park, Pennsylvania. It's about 50 miles from where the rally was. The gun was lawfully obtained by his father. It's people are surprised to hear that it was him that did it. It wasn't anybody like this. Oh yeah, he hung out in his basement. He was always a weird dude. At least at this point, nothing's come out about this Crooks guy that gives us any indication. So again, it could just be, he got fed up. Who knows? There could also be no reason. Who knows? We may never know. We may never know. But the truth of the matter is we don't need to do this. Because if there is anything that makes people afraid of exercising their constitutional right to vote, it's fear, right? It's fear. And it's just ridiculous. There you go.
Yeah, look at that. Of all the things to think of in that moment, it's that.
Well, you know what? I whatever he wants to do, whatever. A lot of people are thinking that it's staged. That's the other conspiracy is like, did he actually stage an assassin? But no, because people lost their lives. I can't imagine like who is going to sacrifice their life for this? Like who's really going to do that? It is what it is. You know what I mean? And Donald Trump is Donald Trump. And that picture doesn't make you qualified to be president.
No.
It's everything you do day in and day out. It's reaching across the aisle. It's making policies that work for all Americans. Yep. It's understanding the diversity in our country. It's not using hateful rhetoric. It's not instigating violence. It's all of those things. And so, we'll see what happens. I am not discouraged. I'll be a little Pollyanna-ish. It's going to be a tough next 4 months, but we can't give up. We just can't.
It's sitting at the head of the table in the Situation Room, keeping a calm, level head.
Calling, can you imagine, President Biden called Donald Trump, probably making sure he's okay. Melania Trump actually put out a statement, and
what did you think of that? I thought it was a little weird.
I thought it was just like, her love, somebody tried to snuff out basically the energy of my husband or something. I don't know.
She's like beneath the political machine as a music lover and lover of ingenuity. And I'm like, that's a little strange.
I know. It's just, I don't know. I can't judge anybody's reaction to something like this because this is so out of left field. Like, I don't know how there's no normal response to something as abnormal as this. So we can't just sit here in judgment of what people should do, say, look, behave and things like that. So I'll save my judgment, but I do think that Donald Trump is a bit odd with the fist pump.
Sit here in judgment. Judgment's my favorite thing.
I know.
Nikki.
But again, it's God, if somebody tried to take a shot at my head, I don't know if a fist pump would be the first thing that I did. But who knows? You know what I mean? Who knows? So before we end the show, though, there were some other people that did sadly pass away this weekend that I wanted to mention.
Weekend full of loss for everybody. It was.
Yeah. So we lost Richard Simmons, which I feel like we were all preparing ourselves for. The exercise guru. He was iconic. He passed away. We lost Dr. Ruth. He was 76, I think.
76? Okay.
Yeah. So we lost Dr. Ruth. She was 96.
Yeah.
So, she lived a nice long life. And then this morning I woke up to Shannon Doherty passed away from 90210. And she had battled a long time with cancer. Mm-hmm. And that was really, really sad. And so, we also lost
Shelley Duvall.
Yes, from
last week.
The Shining.
Yep.
Jaws. She was Olive Oil too. Remember, she was Olive Oil with Robin Williams. We also lost 49er Jacoby Jones died. He was only 40 years old. He was a former 49ers. No, he was a former Ravens player that beat the 49ers. Jacoby Jones passed away. He was only 40 though, and we don't know how he died, but it was really, really sad. Yeah. So we've lost a lot of people in the last couple of days. And not that I want to end on a sad note, but circle of life though. Really, really sad though. Shannon Doherty did pass, and she really fought a really hard fight against cancer. Sad thing is during COVID, she thought in the actors strike and SAG after she lost her health care, and she thought that really hindered her cancer battle and all sorts of things. So a lot of people were making comments that Brenda and Dylan were back together because those were their characters in 90210. So our thoughts and prayers go out to all of them as well. So such a hard weekend for everybody involved. So very, very sad indeed.
I have some uplifting, non-uplifting news, but how it's summer, a lot of people going on vacation, right? Mm-hmm. and thousands of vacation rentals could be removed in Hawaii.
Oh,
Just removed from the list of places that you
is
can
this like
stay.
Airbnbs, you mean?
Yeah, this is phasing out short-term rentals because the governor of Hawaii, his name is Josh Green,
Yeah.
signed this legislation that gives counties across the islands more power to regulate whether or not people can do these short-term rentals or not, and how they can be managed. And so there could be a lot fewer short-term rentals available for people that are staying in Hawaii.
I kind of like that though. I mean, I know that kind of sucks if you want to go and go to the Airbnbs, but I kind of feel like given what we know about, Lahaina rebuilding and the unaffordability of Hawaiians living there,
Mm-hmm.
There needs to be a bit of a course correction, I think, with these short-term rentals
Sure.
and the people that live there. We've seen it in Lake Tahoe and some of these really popular destination sites is those, and especially in places like Hawaii where there's so much culture and family and stuff like that, that you can't sacrifice, generational culture and family
Totally
for the
agree.
almighty dollar. But also you want to make it able for people to go to places to enjoy. So there has to be a correction, I think, and a balance involved.
What if you bought a condo in Hawaii
Mm-hmm.
and realized that the only way you could really afford it is if you rent it out 75% of the time?
Well, then I think that you can't afford it then.
You can't afford it. You got to sell it off. So you can't count on being able to rent it out in order to owning the property, to have that happen.
Yeah.
With this new rule.
Yeah.
So for some homeowners who think, well, it's mine, I should be able to do whatever I want with it. I should be able to rent it to whomever I choose.
I hear what
That's
you're
not,
saying.
Not going to happen,
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, again, I think, there are the zonings and if you're making your house a business, there's zoning
Right.
and there's rules involved with that.
That's true.
And if you buy property but you can't afford it and you don't want to live in it, then you have to, then it's a business and then there's different rules for you. And if you're like, but I wanted to buy this property and rent it out because that's the only way I can afford it, then you can't actually afford it. And if it, and if it's a business, then it's a business and you have to follow the different rules and it sucks. But I would say in places like Hawaii, again, going back to the culture and everything that we've learned, especially following the fire, if you want to own a piece of Hawaii, then be part of the community and live there. And if you don't, and you just want to make some money and have a place you could stay at, a couple of weeks out of the year, then just admit that and maybe just give somebody else that money and get, go to a hotel and support their economy that way. But I don't know. And maybe that's selfish of me to say because I don't own property in Hawaii and I don't know what it must feel like if I do. And then I have these new rules because I'm coming at it with a completely no skin in the game kind of opinion. But I just feel like in places like that, and I'll even say like Tahoe that doesn't have that kind of Hawaiian culture aspect of it. When
Same
you're part
thing,
of the
though.
community, you want
Yeah.
the people that live there to be committed to the community, to have skin in the game and not just try to make a lot of money exploiting those that are just coming for a short amount of time, right?
Yep.
You
No, you're not
know?
wrong.
I mean, I'd love to own a piece of Hawaii, but I'd want to live there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If I was going to buy a piece of paradise, I want to live in that piece of paradise. I don't want to be renting it out. That's for sure. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? You know what I mean? All right. And before we go, though, I did want to share some pictures. I
Oh,
was trying to bring them up real quickly, but my computer is so freaking slow that it's not letting me.
no.
So I went to I was trying to check the paper. I swear to God, we might be in the paper. So over the weekend, I went to the Mrs. Roper Romp in downtown Willow Glen, which is a neighborhood in San Jose. It was, Kim, so much fun. So funny story. We're getting ready to go. Oh, here's the great picture. Hold on. So we're getting ready to go. And my husband's friend has no idea about this event happening. Doesn't even know that we're doing this, okay? And my husband friend texts my husband. And he's like, I'm at this bar in downtown Willow Glen. He's like, all these people showed up in these wigs and like these moo-moos. He's like, there's something weird going on. And so my husband just texted him a picture of his wig because he dressed up as Mrs. Roper. My husband did dressed up as Mrs. Roper too. And he's like, we're pre-gaming. And we go down there. And Kim, I am telling you, if it ever comes to Petaluma, you have to do it. It is so much fun. So here's a picture. This is one of the pictures we took outside of this is at OPA in downtown Willow Glen. When we walked in, every single table was full of Helen Ropers. Okay. This was a picture we took This was all the Helens. This was some of the Helens that we took.
Look at them all.
It was so much fun. So that's my husband in the front and me in the front. Now, I am not lying to you when I say this. He was the most popular Helen. Women were stopping him. Can I take it? Not with us, not a group shot, just my husband. Can we have a picture with you? Can we have a picture? Because I think it was the beard.
Was
you
it
know
the
what
beard?
I mean?
It was the beard and the attitude.
It was the beard and
Yeah.
and the muumuu that he, or the captain that he chose, was like the most popular. And it was so funny, Kim, because it was such a woman moment. He was like, all the women are wearing the same one that I wore, and I thought that I was choosing a unique one because I went on page 3 of Amazon and all these women are wearing the same outfit that I'm wearing. I was cracking up. It was so funny. But you walk in and everyone's like, hi Helen. It was the friendliest, funnest. Like it was a hoot. It was an absolute hoot. There was a place that did trivia. We played trivia. You just walked up and down, had so many conversations with like 20 somethings that had no idea. These 2 girls came up to my friend and I, and they were like, why? I was like, and so I'd explain what Three's Company was, then I'd explain what who Helen Roper was, and they're like, okay, and they're like, we had no idea, and it was so much fun.
Funny.
So if it comes to Petaluma or anywhere near you, definitely do it. It's so much fun.
I wonder who came up with the idea. Who pulled Helen Roper
It was
out
like
of TV history and decided
it was like a
this
guy
is what
10 years ago. Some
so
gay
funny.
man 10 years ago, I think. I read an article. I think it was at least 10 years ago. From what I understand, I think I'm correct. He loved Helen Roper. He loved everything that she stood for. Because if you remember, Jack of Three's Company pretended to be gay so he could live with Janet and Chrissy, and was fooling Helen Roper's husband into believing that he was gay. And Helen knew that he wasn't gay, but like kind of kept the secret for him. So she was very ahead of her time, kind of like free, you know. So I think they just loved Helen, and it just took off. But there was Stanley's, there was a couple of Jacks and Chrissy's, Janet's. There was a couple of those, but tons of Helen Ropers. And I'm telling you, look it up on Facebook. Facebook, I think, is the big kind of place where they organize them.
Sure.
And there's a main site, and they have all the different locations. If it's anywhere close to you, go. It is such a good time.
Well, it's
such
a
a good
time
time
when we need a little uplift. So I'm glad that you did that this weekend. Yeah.
Honestly, I was balancing because it was the same day as the Donald Trump event. And it was like, about 2 different things were happening. And I was like, you know what? I'm keeping my wig on, and that's for a later time. And I definitely needed it. All right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Click that thumbs up button to show your support for the show. We really appreciate it. The super chat is, of course, live, as is our Patreon. If you can't support the show, we really appreciate it. It's very simple. Just go to thenikkimodoroshow.com. The Patreon link is there. PayPal is also an easy way to financially support the show. You just go to paypal.com. You hit the send button and put in the email address, thenikkimodoroshow@gmail.com. And then Auntie Tabby's Island Flavor is our show's sponsor. And she has a guava barbecue sauce, a hibiscus, and a pineapple hot sauce. They're delicious. And if you use the coupon code NIKKIM, NIKKIM, you can get 10% off every single time you order. You can get the Max Pack or the Variety Pack, just like Jim and Dan did. So we appreciate any way you support the show, and thank you guys so much for doing it. All right, we'll talk again tomorrow. Have a great day. Take care of each other, guys. Bye-bye.
Nikki, you're all so awesome. You're proud, like a beautiful blossom. You're also the best. I really can't rest. You're all so awesome.
Wow.